How can you be transparent with your spouse when you have fear of sharing your feelings, or you're afraid that you're going to make them angry, or they're going to be resentful because you brought up a topic? How can we address that? Well, we're going to answer that today. So stay tuned.
You don't want to miss it. You're listening to Marriage Mania, where we are audacious, sagacious, and tenacious for the Lord to uphold godly marriages and to raise fervent children who are countercultural and stand for biblical truth.
Welcome back. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Michael.
And today we're going to answer a question that was submitted by one of our listeners. And today the question is, how can we be transparent and honest with our spouse and communicating with them without them getting angry, resentful, upset, or just having fear of being able to share what's on your heart? How can we do that? So we're going to answer that today. But before we get started, please subscribe here. It helps us to get the message out. We want to reach as many families as possible for Jesus Christ. And we also have Bible studies for husbands and wives to strengthen their marriage. We have the covering the role of a biblical husband and the helper, the role of a biblical wife. These two Bible studies are impactful, and they're 7 weeks each. You can check those out at marriagemaniaministry.com. They are biblically based, and we take a look at the marriages in the Bible and how we can strengthen our marriage. So check those out again at marriagemaniaministry.com. And if you're having conflict, like we're talking about today, we have a book called The Conflict Manual. This book tackles communication styles and the biblical approach to how we can resolve conflict. And so you want to check that out. There's many examples in that book that you can use for your marriage to enhance your communication style. And if you're a mom, you want to check this out. We have a book called Follow Me as I Follow Christ. It's a 31-day devotional on prayer and fasting and how we can pray over our children. This is a personal devotional and with personal accounts. And I'm just really excited to share about it because it really encourages the mothers to pray over their children from before conception, in the womb, and even if into their adulthood. Our children need prayer, and we are to be the prayer warriors of our children. So check that out at marriagemaniaministry.com. Today, we're going to tackle the question on a wife submitted a question. How can she address some conflict or any issues? How can she bring those up without her husband being angry, upset, frustrated, and her having fear of shutting down and the conversation just not getting anywhere? And then it just lingers on and it becomes a long lasting conflict that's not resolved. How can we do this? And Michael, you wrote the conflict manual, and we're talking about conflict and how we can address this. And so I would love to hear your opinion or your direction on how this wonderful listener can really tackle communication, because maybe her husband is hurt. Maybe there's just a lot of bad communication over the years, and they just have never been able to address it. Maybe there's yelling, and maybe people have just shut down, and the anger festers because maybe it brings up another problem from the past that was never addressed. So these are a lot of things that could be happening because we don't have the background of that question, but these are things that come to mind.
Yes, it's hard to answer the question specific to the person who asked it because we don't know their particular situation. So we got to just kind of talk in generalities.
Yeah.
And this is one of the kind of the hardest things to answer is how, in effect, how can I change the other person?
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the biggest effect that you can have on the other person is also to see how perhaps your contributions can maybe affect how the other person is reacting. Not that you're necessarily the cause. It's not a blame situation, but just to actually change someone else, is difficult. But marriage is not just one person. It's a dynamic of two people and how they interact with each other. So you can change a lot in the other person by just mixing up how you're interacting with the other person. You're not necessarily maybe doing anything wrong. but just, maybe I'm doing something in a way that's they're just not reacting well to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I was a police officer for 20 years, and I dealt with a lot of unreasonable people that
Oh
were in the
man.
height of just like arguing. They were in unreasonable situations at the moment where, your emotions get away from you. So they weren't really acting with reason. And and so even though, if I said something and it kind of set them off, I could easily go, well, that's just their problem. They're just unreasonable people. It's just part of their personality. But that didn't help me improve as a communicator. So what I would always do, I always analyzed afterwards, is like, what did I say? What did I say right that really brought peace to the situation?
Mm-hmm.
And what did I say wrong that's like, oh man, I had to do some self-correction in the moment because I said something that really set them off. And did I miss a cue here somewhere that I should have picked up on, that I should have said something differently or something? And by analyzing that helped me become a better communicator, to read situations, to read people better, to know how to say something to a particular person.
Right.
That I might have to say something one way to one person, but something different to another person, because I can read the situation. I can read them a little better. Like, okay, I think if I said it this way, I'm going to set them off. This worked with this other person, but I don't think it's going to work with this one.
Right.
And you start picking up on those subtle cues. So like with the husband as well, you can always look to see how am I approaching him? Is there a way that maybe I can change my approach, that maybe just with his particular personality, I'm saying in something in a way that's just not gelling right with him. So maybe I try something different, and maybe I see, oh wow, when I approach it this way, I actually get a different response.
Yeah.
And so, maybe that's just a unique aspect of his personality, to where before saying it the other way was just not working out well. It was, just from his background, or just maybe just how he perceived your tone of voice or your expressions. We got to look out for those things. We never know that we can come back and say, well, I said that in a nice way. Well, also examine your tone of voice or your expressions. Could it have been in a way that he took in kind of a accusatory way? I know, like, sometimes a wife can be like, to give an example, of a wife that would just like help out her husband in doing something that I see something needs to be done, and so I just did it for him, and I thought that would have been a nice gesture, and all of a sudden he just blew up, and I don't understand what his problem was. He's just unreasonable, and he got upset. He shouldn't get upset. I was just being nice. But what if he was like, well, every time she does something for me, it's because I feel like she's like having to, because I'm not getting around to it and she's upset. So even though this time she was doing it as a favor, in his mind, he's like, oh no, now she had to do it because I'm not getting to it and she's having to do it herself. And so that makes him offended. It's those kind of things. We got to see how somebody might be viewing something, or react to certain things. And you can never go wrong by making sure we have a soft startup. One of the biggest rules in conflict resolution is to have a soft startup. A soft answer turns away wrath, the Bible says, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So we want to make sure that we are using soft words, and the best time to use it is when we start, because arguments tend to end how they start. And so, just make sure you're coming to your husband softly, and that's not just the husband should make sure when he has an issue with his wife, do the same thing.
Right.
We should always, what's the softest way that I can approach this? Make sure we have good timing. Is he in a good mood? Kids intuitively know if when I need to go to my parents for something, they're constantly looking. Are they in a good mood? Is this a good time? And we kind of seem to forget that as adults. And we just like, whenever we're in the moment and we just address it, and it's like right when they walked in the door, or you can tell they're frustrated. It's like, whatever, I don't care if they're frustrated. They should be able to take this. Like, no, you got to make sure we got good timing. If you got a big issue to talk with them, maybe we sit down. Standing's a power posture. It's easier to yell and antagonize people when you're standing. So sit down, hold hands, get those love connection chemicals going, and maybe even start with an apology for my contribution, which invites the other person to examine their own contribution. And now you're attacking an issue. And so it's those kind of things that there's about 50 really good conflict resolution principles in my book, The Conflict Manual. And try those different ones and see how you might be getting a different reaction when you try those different principles. If we don't know all these, we might be violating good sound conflict resolution principles, and that could be our issue, and we don't even realize it. And just a simple reading of the conflict manual can alert you to, like, oh wow, I do that. We have an argument that we play out in the conflict manual, and we analyze what they did right or wrong and give the scriptural support for the principles. The Bible has so much to say about how we talk to one another. Yeah. And so, it goes through an argument and covers all 50 of those principles. And I've know of people that have read that book and they're like, oh wow, I do that very thing. I violate that every time, and never even drew the connection. Every time I say that, I set my spouse off. And it's like, that's why.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And it's just an opportunity for us to also self-evaluate our hearts and self-evaluate how we're communicating. And so I'm thankful that the listener sent this message, because it helps us to be able to talk through this and share, biblical truth. We want, soft answer turns away wrath. And we don't want our marriages to be broken in this area. We want to enhance our communication and not have fear to be able to go to our spouse because we're one, right? We don't want to have a fear that the other person's going to yell at us or get angry. So, I think this was a great response. And one thing I want you to mention is the THINK acronym. We don't have to get into the details of everything, but I think if you could just kind of give that overview so people can see that, because that's part of your book that they can check out.
Right. Yeah. A great filter that we should all have before a lot of times when we get frustrated at somebody, we just speak it out, and we don't even think about how to approach it with a plan of what's the best way to address this issue with the other person. We don't give any thought to that whatsoever. And a great filter is to think before we speak. The acronym THINK is what I'm about to say true. It does need to be true and accurate, first of all. But that's not the only filter. Sometimes, I'm just being honest. And it's like, well, we're just being honestly mean. We don't want to be honestly mean either. So not only is it true, but is what I'm about to say helpful? Is what I'm about to say inspiring? Am I going to say it in a way that inspires the person to change or to do what I'm asking them to do? Is what I'm about to say necessary to even say? The Bible tells us it's the glory of a man to overlook a matter. There's some small things we got to let go.
Yeah.
We don't want to let significant issues go. We need to address those, but small things, if we address every small thing, we're going to wear the relationship out. We got to have a filter there as well. Is it necessary for me to even address this? Or is this a small thing that I can just kind of overlook? And then what I'm about to say kind. Whatever I say, I need to say it in a kind way. And it needs to come across as being kind. And is my mannerisms, my tone of voice, and my mannerisms kind as well? So is it true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind? What I'm about to say, have a plan to address an issue in the most thoughtful, kind way that I can. That's a big key.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. The THINK acronym. I love that. And we talked about that in your book. And so that is really inspiring. So we hope that this question was helpful to you, and we would love to hear your feedback. We would love to hear if you have any further questions, or if there's something that we could add to that. That would be amazing. And if you want to submit any questions, please just put in questions in the comments, and we'll send you a link to be able to submit questions for future podcasts. So we are so thankful. If you like this podcast, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Share it with a friend. It really helps us to get our message out there. And so we are grateful that we were able to answer this, and we are so thankful for all our listeners. Until next time.
God bless.